And these are sort of run-of-the-mill, this is how the ACA helps people. A 55-year-old painter who'd been painting for decades, owned his own small painting business, was close to losing his livelihood because of osteoarthritis in a knee that kept him limping around. He couldn't climb a ladder anymore. His other joints were starting to hurt because of the way he had to move because of his knee. He saw one of our navigators, got an ACA policy, got his knee replaced, and he's well. His small business is thriving. He's going to be able to paint as long as he wanted to. And that's only because the ACA exists. He didn't qualify for any sort of government aid, and he certainly couldn't afford a private insurance policy at age 55. A 23-year-old woman working as a server here in Asheville, she and her husband had an unplanned pregnancy because they couldn't afford affordable birth control. I mean, not affordable, they couldn't afford really birth control that works very well. So after that birth, we saw her through that pregnancy, and after that birth, she and her husband got an ACA policy and she got an IUD. They're happy, they're still working, they have what they need. And then my 30-year-old cashier with terrible psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, she was too embarrassed to date, hadn't dated in years because of the big scaly plaques she had all over herself that couldn't quite be covered with long sleeve shirts and long pants. Also, her joints hurt enough that she was just worn out by the end of her day at the cash register and didn't have a whole lot of energy to do much of anything after work. So she got an ACA policy a couple of years ago, got to see the rheumatologist, as it is on some very high-powered but very expensive drugs. Her skin is clear, her joints don't hurt, she's dating, and she's full of energy. She worked full-time before her ACA policy, and she works full-time now. The difference is that she got affordable coverage. And as I was leaving, a friend of mine said, tell my patient's story, because it's sort of recent. A 25-year-old server with type 1 diabetes that she's had since she was 11, who lost her insurance because she has seasonal work. You know, and sometimes in the winter in Asheville, their hips aren't so great, there's not that much action downtown. She couldn't afford her health insurance premiums anymore, lost her insurance, couldn't afford her insulin pump supplies. Her diabetes got out of control. She was admitted with a complication of type 1 diabetes called diabetic ketoacidosis. And she found our clinic after that. So she saw a navigator, she got an ACA policy, she has her pump supplies. So her diabetes is under control, she's seeing a counselor now, and her depression that she has had around her medical condition and her financial condition that was produced by her medical condition are getting better. She's seeing a nutritionist for the first time in her life. She's learning about how to help her type 1 diabetes through her diet. So that was sort of our most recent success with an ACA exchange policy. The only other, am I running out of time? No. The only other piece, so I know that the ACA is multifaceted, and John talked about a lot of facets I'm not even familiar with, and I know Jackie will talk about even more. But the two that are in my world all day are the exchange policies and the Medicaid expansion. Would you raise your hand if you're familiar with the lack of Medicaid expansion? Oh, so I don't have to explain that either. This is great! So I want to say again, my patients work, but when you work for minimum wage, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, you make roughly $15,000 before taxes. You just barely qualify to buy an ACA policy if it's just you and your family, which is great. But if you work 30 hours a week for minimum wage, because your employer won't give you 40 hours, because if they did, they would have to give you health insurance, or for any other reason you can't get to the cutoff, and you just don't quite make enough money, then, because North Carolina didn't take the Medicaid expansion money, you don't qualify to buy an ACA policy, and you don't qualify for government coverage through Medicaid. Whereas if you lived in a lot of others, right, exactly, boo. The Medicaid expansion for me and my work was the most exciting part of the ACA when it passed. It was mind-boggling when we didn't take the money here in North Carolina. And the reason why so many patients in my clinic are still uninsured is because so many patients in my clinic are too poor to buy insurance and too poor to qualify for Medicaid. So those are the patients, my working adults, who we had our visit, we've had a great meet and greet, we had a great talk, we've decided what we both think ought to happen, and far too often, those things can't happen. There's just no money anywhere, well, that anyone's willing to give up to pay for it. And that is the part of my work that is still pretty sad. So, in closing, I just want to say that whether the ACA is repealed and replaced, no matter what happens going forward, I think it's really important that we stand together to advocate for some sort of coverage to be available to everyone. Yeah. Everyone. And my great hope is that my kind of job will go away when we do. So.